Greetings, brave adventurers, and welcome to The Keep. My name is Lindsey the Keeper, and it is my duty to tell cringy tales from r/RPG horror stories to protect reality from eldritch horrors with the help of my little friend, Tao. So, DMPCs. You either do it well enough that they are assisting the group without taking over the story completely, but still be relevant to said group, or you do it so terribly that the players will have PTSD whenever a different DM decides that they want to bring their DMPC. There is no in between on it. Today's story is a trilogy with OP's experience where she was invited into a game, make a character that has to be involved in one way or another with the DMPC or their family, which ended with the DMPC forcing OP's character into marriage, and how that started the downfall of the table. Plus other slightly creepy and crappy things the DM did to OP out of game as well. Now, sit back, relax, and cuddle up to your favorite tendril as we dive in on these horrifying stories. Enjoy! Na na na, danger zone. These stories are written by user excellent_patience, with this first story titled The DMPC Proposed to Me and It Destroyed Our Table, Part 1. This is going to be a long story. It's one that slowly brewed over 2 years of D&D and came with a fair bit of real-life drama. Honestly, the number of red flags I miss might make you think I'm colorblind. Just a heads up, I've changed a lot of details to avoid making this traceable, but the key parts are still here. I'd wanted to play D&D for years, but I always thought it would be too complicated or that I'd make a fool of myself. My best friend encouraged me to give it a shot when a spot opened up at their table. They thought my storytelling style would be a great fit, so I finally agreed. To say I was excited but nervous is an understatement. To give me time to prepare, my friend reserved the spot for me. Since I wouldn't have a session 0, they let me observe a regular session first, and I had a one-on-one interview with the DM to see if I'd fit in. The session was fun. As my friend had mentioned, the campaign dealt with serious topics with focus on RP and backstory. Then came the day I met the DM. He seemed fine, didn't notice anything weird at first, though I did mention not wanting anyone to bring drama to the table. He decided I was sane enough and asked what I prepared, so I introduced my character. A rogue assassin spy type, a fallen noble obsessed with regaining her status, but secretly soft-hearted because she took care of her 2 younger siblings after they were orphaned. The DM loved the idea, which gave me confidence, and I got really excited to play. But he warned me that the Assassin's Guild in his homebrew was a lot more realistic and expected its members, especially the women, to use all means necessary to complete a mission. I was fine with that as long as it was handled gracefully. He asked if I had any major boundaries in RP, and I said that I drew the line at any exploitations involving minors. He assured me that wouldn't be an issue. The campaign premise was pretty straightforward. Our party was hired by a powerful sorcerer to complete quests, though we weren't supposed to know his family's true motives. Each of our characters had some connection to the sorcerer or his family. To integrate my character, the DM asked for 3 things: her goals and dreams, a picture, and a creative backstory tied to the sorcerer. I uploaded a bunch of character art, including a cosplay that matched my vision for her, a femme fatale rogue. The DM's immediate response was, "God, I'd totally break my fast for her," followed by a JK. I checked in with my friend later, and they said the DM sometimes talked about his sorcerer in the first person, but that his character wasn't interested in romance. They assured me it was just a joke. The Telegram group for the campaign seemed nice. There were only 2 things to note. Everyone else knew each other, and the fact that I'm originally from a different country with a bit of an accent and I'm mixed race. This becomes relevant in part 2, unfortunately. But this is as good of a time as any to introduce the key players to part 1. Wizard, sponsored by Sorcerer's family as a child, now works for them, played by my best friend. Bard, College of Whispers Bard, owns everything to Sorcerer's family, played by DM's sister. Druid, Moon Druid who lost everything and is indebted to the family, played by DM's best friend. And Paladin, sworn to serve the Sorcerer's family, another childhood friend of the DM. Then there was me, the Rogue, a newcomer that nobody trusted. My character was secretly assigned to spy on the party and the Sorcerer's family, but presented herself as a rogue trying to turn over a new leaf. It was really fun. She had little side missions that other players didn't know about, and whenever someone questioned her, she'd flirt her way out of trouble. This included Charming Sorcerer, who didn't expect my character to be a flirt. She'd been trained to use charm as a tool, but was slowly warming up to the group. After a few sessions, things took a turn. The guild started doubting my rogue's loyalty, saying the intel she's been providing was useless. Her siblings would pay the price if she didn't retrieve specific information from the sorcerer by any means necessary. I didn't love this, so I talked to the DM, who assured me that nothing would actually happen to her siblings and that it was just to motivate my character. So, my rogue began focusing her charm on Sorcerer, hoping to gain access to his chambers to find what she needed. Sorcerer didn't resist much. He was smitten and started showering her with gifts. Meanwhile, Druid's player started teasing me above the table, calling my character a gold digger repeatedly. Wizard assured me it was all in good fun and only about the characters, not me. But something about it felt off, especially since the jokes were mostly directed at Rogue and Wizard. Then, 5 sessions later, the DM announced he wanted to step back from DMing to let others take the reins and give himself a chance to play a PC. He asked Wizard to DM the ongoing campaign, not just the one-shot. Wizard was excited but hadn't expected to take over something this complex. Sorcerer wanted to continue interacting with everyone as a player character and explore all the relationships he had with the group. Wizard agreed, surprisingly chill with it. The DM and I began chatting more in private about our characters. He asked if Rogue was just after the intel or if there was something more. I clarified that she didn't want to marry Sorcerer or have his kids, but was charmed by his kindness and was focused on her mission. He seemed to understand, or so I thought. The next session, Sorcerer suddenly grew suspicious of Rogue and distanced himself, and the guild informed her, via private message, that they'd taken her siblings and she had 3 days to deliver the information. Panic, Rogue tried to regain Sorcerer's trust. Wizard was trying to run a straightforward mission, but kept being pulled aside by Sorcerer, who was more focused on his character's relationships than the plot. Eventually, Sorcerer confronted Rogue privately, revealing he knew about her siblings and was willing to help if she was honest with him. She confessed everything, begging for his help. In response, Sorcerer offered her everything she ever wanted, but only if she married him. Sorcerer was dangling her dreams right in front of her, but marriage wasn't what I envisioned for her arc. Still, my rogue said yes because otherwise she risked losing her siblings. Druid's player exclaimed, "What the F?" and left the session. Later, I found out that Druid and Bard had a massive fallout with DM and left the campaign temporarily. And that was just the beginning. Part 2 will have new characters, old tensions, and things are only going to get weirder. Stay tuned for the rest. It's a wild ride. End of part 1. Wow, the red flags were waving so much that I am surprised anyone missed it. Where do I begin with this? The interview with the DM has a couple of red flags raised. I understand not wanting to deal with the drama, but spoiler alert, the DM is the drama and hangs around with drama. Also, the underlying comments about breaking his fast and the whole any means necessary gives me creepy vibes. Like, I get that OP wanted to go for the femme fatale rogues, which honestly, love it, but I just hate that he made it creepy. Not to mention that putting JK at the end of it doesn't make it funny. Same with LOL as well. Also, Druids calling OP a gold digger doesn't make sense. OP is not calling the DM Dungeon Daddy and asking him to buy her the most expensive items imaginable. Plus, it's not really a joke if that person always targets one specific person. Even my group of friends usually pick on each other in light tone. I think what also makes it worse is when the DM decides to step down from being DM and becomes a player and having another player to step up to the plate and using the excuse of, I want my characters to build his relationships with the others as an excuse to lure OP into a situation of, I will help you with this, but you have to marry my character, even though you stated that it's not what your character wanted. Lol. But remember, this is only part 1 of 3, so we have some more story to go through. Here is part 2 of the DMPC proposed to me and it destroyed our table. In the last part, I explained the lead up to the inciting incident. Now I'll cover the fallout and the marriage itself. After the whole proposal fiasco, I asked the DM for a chat. I wanted to know why Sorcerer would marry my rogue, especially since she wasn't in love with him, as it didn't make much sense for him to trust a spy. The DM assured me it was to protect her and the kids, and that he knew Rogue wasn't in love with him. He even added that, in time, Rogue will come to love me. I wasn't thrilled with the idea, but as a newbie, I figured the DM knew what he was doing, especially since the campaign was engaging and well run. I agreed, but asked to build up the story. I wanted to see the fallout with the Assassin's Guild, explore how her siblings would cope with all of this, and see my rogue balance being both a party member and married to our sponsor. He assured me we'd cover all this during his next session as DM, but then he said we'd have to wait until he could convince his stepsister to get over it. When I asked what he meant, he explained that Bard and Druid were mad at him for proposing to a newbie, though he thought he could bring Bard back. He insisted it wasn't about me and that it was an above-table issue he'd handle. So, I decided to focus on my character's new goals and inner conflict. I wanted Rogue to feel realistic, so I planned for her to struggle with readjusting to nobility and her fears of losing everything. Wizard suggested I keep a diary to deepen her character, and it ended up being a great idea that the DM also liked. While waiting for the next big session, Wizard ran a lighthearted story for Paladin, Sorcerer, and me for some character building. In it, Sorcerer announced his marriage to his family and coordinated a rescue for the children. Paladin, meanwhile, wrestled with protecting someone he didn't even trust at first. It was great building Rogue and Paladin's dynamic, and we even had some heartfelt moments. But at the end, Sorcerer returned from a solo mission and made it clear to Paladin that he was not to see Rogue as anything other than mistress of the house, and that she was only mine. Apparently, Sorcerer's protectiveness and jealousy was part of his character flaws, though it was strange how he never shown this before. But since the campaign had already dealt with complex topics, I went along with it, thinking it was part of the plan. Yes, I know. Then Bard came back, and the DM started DMing again. He immediately focused on her, setting up a mini arc where she struggled with Sorcerer rejecting her advances, news to me since there was no hint of this earlier. Bard threw a fit, cursed my character, and then rolled to seduce an NPC who was the Sorcerer's cousin and looked just like him. The roll succeeded, and the DM and Bard role-played it all out in graphic detail. Wait, isn't she... Ew. When asked, the DM said Bard had always wanted to do more romantic roleplay, but that he had rejected the idea as it felt weird flirting with his sister. However, he promised she was free to seduce now. After this, Bard never had an issue with the DM again, on or off the table. And what happened to our big marriage story arc? Well, Sorcerer pulled Rogue aside, had her sign a magical blood binding contract, reassured her the kids were adopted by the family, and boom, they were married. He also informed me that the guild was taken care of, and that the kids were already in the mansion. The whole thing took less than Bard's mini arc, and definitely less time than that intimate scene. No rules, no real conflict, just nothing. It was anticlimactic to say the least. In the next session, Paladin cited scheduling conflicts, so Wizard was tasked with recruiting new players since they had done a great job bringing me in. Wizard, ever so diligent, found some friends, and DM interviewed them, approving 3 new characters. Cleric, part of a secret cult run by the Sorcerer's family. Artificer, sponsored by the Sorcerer's family and hopes to work for them. And Warlock, sold his soul to a demon connected to the cult and supposedly key to the family's future plans. Artificer and Warlock were exes, and Warlock and Cleric had a flirtationship. They were all close friends now, which, spoiler alert, would matter in part 3. By the time they joined, Rogue was the mistress of the household and expected to be a mentor figure to the new players. I was excited to guide the party, give them some respect, and join them on their first main mission. Sorcerer didn't like it, saying things like, "The mistress of this household shouldn't be doing things beneath her." But Rogue convinced him to let her go, arguing she needed to see if they were trustworthy. He reluctantly agreed. The mission was easy since it was tailored to the new character's level, but Rogue ended up doing most of the heavy lifting as the only martial character. She got hurt, but Cleric healed her. Still, Sorcerer used this as an excuse to forbid her from going on dangerous missions again. Rogue pushed back, but the tension between them was growing. I told the DM I wasn't happy with Rogue being barred from missions, as it defeated the purpose of D&D. He said that wasn't the intention, but now that Rogue was a married woman, she had to balance that role too. He then mentioned he wanted to make the campaign more magic-based, and he didn't think my character fit because she was just a rogue. After a long argument, we compromised on giving her tasks while the others did magic-related missions. What I didn't realize was that these tasks would involve either going on dates with Sorcerer, enduring constant reminders from NPCs that Rogue wasn't good enough, or repeatedly proving herself to Sorcerer's family members every single session. Meanwhile, the others were off on actual adventures. I did my best to roll with it. I refined my character, learned new skills, and stayed true to Rogue, but I was basically a housewife. I told the DM this wasn't working and that I felt like an NPC. Seeing how upset I was, he admitted he struggled to give Rogue meaningful tasks without conflicting with Sorcerer's family's value, and that it would be out of character for Sorcerer to let his wife just wander off. Frustrated, I asked why Rogue had to marry him if it wasn't a true part of the story. He replied that he just liked Rogue. When I asked if he met Sorcerer or himself, he said both. He added that he had a thing for girls with accents and liked that Rogue was mixed race like me. So I asked if he was attracted to me, and he swore up and down that it wasn't like that. He just thought Rogue was perfect for Sorcerer and wanted her to be a powerful mistress, but needed to handle the other players' arcs. He promised to fix it, and unfortunately, I trusted him again. By this time, Wizard was becoming absent from both the game and my life. Meanwhile, the DM started focusing more on Warlock and Artificer, who were getting closer to him, while Cleric was also starting to disappear, which is relevant for Part 3. Whenever there was a disagreement, they just labeled me as dramatic, so I believed them and kept quiet. Finally, to make me happy, the DM decided to give me a project. He wanted to move our adventures to a new setting and asked me to design it. Everything. Its economy, social system, and religions. And as an amateur writer and total fool, I happily accepted it. In Part 3, we'll dive into emotional breakdowns, betrayal, and the thrilling finale to the worst table ever. End of Part 2. Oh, Cthulhu, Part 2 is worse than Part 1 was. Let's just go from the top. So, recap. The DM, aka the DMPC sorcerer, basically put OP's rogue into a situation of forced marriage. Even though they talked about it outside of game about it and made it super anticlimactic. Then Bard comes back and I had to check to see what relation she was with the DM, and yeah, that whole thing is super creepy. Then once the sham wedding is done, which I honestly expected DM to be over the top about it, but I guess that privilege goes to his sister. Ew. Anyways, but as soon as she is the mistress of the household, she is forced to be basically the housewife, which that's not how D&D works. Look, I had a character who was married and had kids, and she still went on adventures because she still had a goal and a dream. Don't get me wrong, I will revamp her to be better than what that campaign was, but that's besides the point. If you want your character to have a family or even just a spouse or partner while they are adventuring, that is something you need to talk to your DM about. Most of the time, a spouse or partner is fine, but usually kids is for the epilogue when the story ends. However, just because you have a partner or spouse doesn't mean that you are forced to be the housewife or house husband for the rest of the adventure. That is the point of D&D. It's to go on an adventure, be heroes and save the day, or depending on the campaign, be the villains and watch as the world burns. Whatever that campaign is, it doesn't force you to stay at home and go, "Yes, dear," to your spouse. Plus, you can already tell from Part 1, but Part 2 shows it clear as day that DM has a thing for OP. The way he displays it is creepy and inappropriate, to put it nicely. He is trying to force OP, and out of game, into this weird box where he wants her to be obedient to his character, but also acts like he has zero interest in her, which even a blind person can see it's untrue. Plus, exploiting OP into making a brand new setting for his campaign and story is a dick move. But let's see how everything turns to ash in Part 3. Part 3 and the final story of the DMPC proposed to me and it destroyed our table. In this part, you'll read the dramatic climax of this whole saga. Honestly, I don't even know how to prepare you for it except to say the drama was so intense it wrecked both the campaign and some real-life friendships. Fair warning, this part includes microaggressions, mentions of child exploitations, and sexual harassment. When the DM invited me to build a new setting for our campaign, I was thrilled. He told me to stick to the general feel of the homebrew, but that I could add my own flavor. He also wanted to have realistic themes and suggested looking at real-world civilizations for inspiration. I was excited about the creative challenge, but I asked why he wanted to move the campaign to a new setting and how it would all go down. He confided that the current setting would be destroyed soon, so the party would need to relocate many people to a new place. The sorcerer's family knew about this impending disaster and was planning to move and seize control of a new city using their cult and resources. The DM also suggested this would be a chance for my character to gain influence within the sorcerer's family and help shape this new place while the sorcerer pursued his own goals. I thought this was a win-win situation, but I knew it would take a lot of work. We agreed I'd take the time I needed to set things up and only join sessions where my character's input and guidance was necessary. We also planned for the DM to host a session to lay the groundwork for my character's temporary exit. So, in the next session, most players were there, including the wizard and cleric, who I barely saw before this. The DM set events in motions, giving closure to storylines tied to the current setting. We had some great scenes, including one where Rogue received a magical dagger from the sorcerer as a symbol of his love and promised to build an empire for her. They shared a romantic moment that led to a fade to black scene. The session ended with the start of a massive disaster, forcing a city-wide evacuation. The sorcerer would lead everyone, including the party, to a promised land, the new setting. The roleplay was really good, and everyone was excited for what came next. After that, the DM let me know I could take my time since my character would be traveling separately with the sorcerer's family. When we reconnected, it would be after a time skip. I was worried the party might resent my character for abandoning them, but the DM reassured me that they'd understand because when the next time they see Rogue, she'd be pregnant. I didn't love that he made this decision as soon as our characters had intimacy, but I didn't mind the idea of pregnancy as I thought it could add a fresh dynamic to the story. Thus, I focused on building the new setting, which was really exciting. Since the wizard was mostly absent, the DM guided me, keeping communications open, praising my ideas, and encouraging me daily. This built a level of trust between us. Yes, I know. I spent months building the setting, incorporating features that each player could enjoy. I added a temple for the cleric and the cult, an underground entertainment area for Bard, and a commercial district for Artificer. I even asked each player for input to make it more engaging. Bard's advice? To double check every detail because Druid would be returning and he was going to give me hell. When I asked the DM about it, he said he and the Druid had patched things up and he'd be returning as a co-DM since the wizard hadn't been around enough for him to enjoy being a PC. He told me there were no plans for the Druid to rejoin as a player, but that it wouldn't hurt to add things he might like. I messaged the Druid to ask for his input, but he never replied, even though I knew he was active on social media. When I asked the DM about it, he assured me the Druid didn't dislike me. He even joked that I was the best of the gold diggers in the DM's life. Lovely. So, I braced myself for the Druid's return and tried to attend sessions where my input was needed. But soon enough, my workload exploded. The DM wanted my character to create a new spy/assassin's guild to keep tabs on the city, and I was expected to roleplay every aspect of this in sessions without time to set it up in the background. It was stressful, especially since the Artificer had endless requests for her business dealings, which I was also expected to help with. The DM was letting the Artificer do almost anything she wanted with her character, and she kept pulling the spotlight. She often overshadowed the wizard and cleric, and the only reason the warlock stayed relevant was because the Artificer was romancing him. As a surprise to no one, the DM and Artificer started hanging out a lot in real life, along with the warlock. They'd even share updates in our group chats about their outings. At first, Cleric was happy for them and asked to join them next time, but they ignored him every time. Shortly after, Wizard reached out to apologize for their absence, explaining that they had recently started dating Cleric and wanted to keep things private until it felt more serious. They thought that announcing the relationship to the group might actually ease some of the tension, especially since Artificer seemed to get more territorial around Warlock, as if she wanted to get back together with him. Surprisingly, the announcement did improve things, at least temporarily. Claire became more active in sessions, and I made sure they both had meaningful involvement when they reached the new setting. But things quickly soured. Cleric, feeling encouraged by the positive response, overstepped by showing up unannounced to one of DM, Warlock, and Artificer's hangouts after they casually shared the location in our group chat. From what I heard, Artificer berated Cleric, and Warlock, who was supposedly friends with both, just stood by. Rather than diffusing the situation, the DM let Artificer continue to undermine Cleric in game, justifying it was something her character would do. I wasn't around for most of the drama, but Cleric and Wizard filled me in during a private get-together. When I brought it up with the DM, he said he hadn't meant for things to spiral like this, claiming it was just lingering tension between Cleric and Artificer that had built up over the years. Wizard agreed that the issues between Cleric and Artificers were theirs to resolve, but pointed out that the DM has been fanning the flames. It honestly seemed like the DM just didn't like Cleric, even though he'd always deny it. Either way, the damage was done. Wizard felt little motivation to attend sessions anymore, if they had any to begin with, while of course Cleric just abandoned ship. With the Wizard and Cleric out, the DM brought the Druid back as a player and backup DM. Druid inspected every detail I added to the setting, nitpicking its realism, even though a lot of it was based on Artificer's requests, and no one stepped in to call him out on anything. Not to mention, the gold-digging Joes made a comeback. One day, while I was struggling to revise yet another part of the setting under Druid scrutiny, I broke down. My partner found me mid-panic attack. He didn't know much about D&D, but he told me I shouldn't keep playing if it was causing this much stress. I tried to explain how much work I put in and how hard it was to just walk away. He wasn't happy with my decision to stay, but suggested I talk to DM since we're supposedly close. So I did, even though I was still in a bad headspace. I explained my frustrations, but the DM was defensive, saying I'd asked for this and had always complained about not having enough to do. I panicked again, saying it wasn't fair that I had so much responsibility while others didn't. He got angry, but then apologized and said he'd fix everything and that I could take a break for my mental health. This is when the love bombing started. The DM checked in constantly, calling me one of the best players he ever had, suggesting we hang out as friends, and updating me on changes he make to make things easier for me. He even claimed to have talked to the Druid and Artificer to keep them in line. And I'm sad to say, it got me. I agreed to keep playing, but only in sessions that directly impacted my character story. The next time I was invited, we had a session at Artificer's house. She let me in and told me to go ahead and join the group at the table. She had to grab something from her room. As I got closer, I could hear DM talking openly about mixed girls in a way that felt objectifying. When Warlock noticed me, they went quiet for a moment, saying they hadn't expected me so soon and brushed it off as locker room talk about their types. Artificer later backed them up, saying it was just harmless chatter. I told them I wasn't comfortable with conversations like that, especially since I identified as ace. DM seemed surprised, asking questions about how things worked between me and my partner and how I could be sure. I made it clear I didn't want to discuss it further, but he never fully respected that boundary. Warlock and Artificer just laughed it off, and without Wizard and Cleric around, I started wondering if I was just being sensitive. After all, it wasn't the first time people had been intrusive about my sexuality. One thing I can say in DM's favor is that he kept his word about not letting Artificer make any more changes. But the same can't be said about Druid. When he took over as DM, he was distant, barely looking at me, keeping things short, and constantly questioning my character's choices. In one scene, he had me speak with an NPC my character had good relations with, who suddenly turned hostile. When I asked why, the NPC claimed he didn't want to work with a child exploiter. I was stunned and tried to reassure him that wasn't true, but he insisted that my character's guild employed children with a by any means necessary approach. I felt sick. DM, who was playing as a PC at the time, said nothing. When I confronted DM about this, he said he didn't want to override Druid's choices. I pointed out that he interviewed with Wizard as DM, but he brushed it off, saying Wizard was just a poor fit for the role. I kept pushing back against the child exploiter allegations, but DM argued that he warned me his world was realistic and that in an assassin's guild, things like that happen. He claimed he put it in the background since I refused to roleplay it directly. I was horrified and told him my character wanted out of the guild entirely. He replied that it would mean she needed to start a new system from scratch, something he said was completely my responsibility. Seeing my reaction, he backtracked, offering to work with me on changing things and promising to keep Druid from bringing it up again. Not long after this ordeal, Druid refused to DM any further. When DM and I began working to set things right, part of our solution played out in-game. His character shifted from a player role to a guide for mine, letting my character take the lead in planning and speaking. Around that time, I began noticing that every time I said certain words, both Warlock and DM would ask to repeat myself. I assumed it was because of my pronunciation and was too embarrassed to bring it up. But recently, I caught Warlock and DM exchanging glances when they did this, and when DM noticed me staring, he just said, "I just love how you pronounce those words," with Warlock smirking and nodding. You'd think I have told them off, but I felt even more embarrassed instead. Maybe it was because when I glanced at Druid, his expression seems irritated, like he was annoyed with me. 2 sessions later, I woke up to a flood of texts and an indecent picture from DM. He was talking about how he could make me happy and other things I don't even want to repeat. I was completely stunned and couldn't react. The next day, he had deleted everything and texted, "Oops, wrong person." That finally snapped me out of it. I told him off and said he couldn't just send something like that without apologizing. He insisted he never do that with a taken woman and even showed screenshots of another conversation claiming the messages were meant for someone else. He said he thought I hadn't seen the image, which is why he hadn't apologized. Not knowing how to respond, I asked my partner for advice. My partner was furious, saying he hated this guy and thought the whole thing seems deliberate. I also reached out to Wizard, who told me they'd talked to DM to get to the bottom of things. DM showed Wizard the same proof he showed me, and Wizard offered to mediate between us if I really wanted to keep playing. I know some of you are probably wondering why I even considered saying after this. The truth? I didn't want to lose all the work I put into this campaign. And somehow, DM knew this. He called me, saying he'd restart the entire world if I needed to regain my trust. Something in me just snapped. I called him and let him have it, screaming for hours. I felt better afterward, and he even said he deserved it. He kept promising to make whatever changes I wanted if I stayed. Wizard, though, was not happy with how it was handled, especially since DM had apparently told both Druid and Bard about the incident. They both said they didn't see what the big deal was since the message obviously wasn't meant for me, and the picture wasn't even that explicit. That made me feel like maybe I overreacted, so I asked Wizard and my partner to drop it. I didn't even want to keep revisiting it. They both respected my wishes. This is when the love bombing started again, but by now, I was finally seeing through all of it. When he realized it wasn't working, he went public on Telegram, inviting everyone back, Cleric included, for an epic battle, and hinting at a fresh start afterward. He knew exactly how to get a reaction from me, and I took the bait. I asked if he was planning to kill our characters and erase my work. He claimed he wasn't, but he said he wanted to start fresh in my setting, suggesting we all make new characters to take down the cult since we clearly weren't the good guys. Then he said I was welcome to create a hero-type character if I wanted, as long as it's female, since he really enjoyed how I played female characters. I didn't respond to that. Right around this time, Druid had clearly had enough and made a sarcastic remark asking if DM was planning to marry in real life as well. DM said no, unless it was something like immigration purposes, which I have never had issues with, and that he'd do it for any of his friends. This sparked a huge argument, and Druid ended up leaving the Telegram group and the campaign for good. DM insisted that Druid just couldn't handle that he wasn't his only friend, and that Druid should stay out of his business. After all this drama, Warlock cited scheduling conflicts as his reason for stepping away from the campaign. I still showed up to the session DM invited us to, along with Wizard, because we both wanted to see what he had planned. However, we decided to go last minute, and I didn't bring my entire library of lore with me. DM punished me for this by reducing my points, and I distinctly remember Artificer laughing about it. I remembered after everything was done, DM tried asking if I was mad at him for the deduction, to which I didn't respond. However, I felt really bad about how much work I put into everything, and started venting to my partner. They said, "Okay, but when was the last time you had fun in this campaign?" That prompted my second emotional breakdown. My partner was there to comfort me and talk to me about the sunk cost fallacy and to give it time, and I did. Both Wizard and I decided to ghost the table and never look back. That was a year ago. I found out from the grapevine that Artificer and Warlock got back together. They're currently chill with Wizard and Cleric, who are engaged. I'm expected to be a bridesmaid. As for the rest, I haven't heard anything since. Oh, and the DM? He's dating Artificer's best friend, who is 10 years younger than him. But hey, that's a story in itself. I hope everyone here had a great time. I admit, it was nice to vent here. And don't worry, I'm in a much better table now with no DMPCs in sight. TLDR, DM made me do all the work of world building for him, let the other players treat me badly, crossed my boundaries, made inappropriate comments regarding my ethnicity, and sent me a lewd picture. The table is no more, and I am in a much better place now. End of Trilogy. And that is the end of this trilogy. Throughout all 3 parts of the story, there has been one question that has been burning in my mind. Why did all the PCs have to incorporate their backstory and mix it with the DMPC and his family? I mean, it's one thing if 2 players wanted to share a backstory with their characters, but this is different. It's a mixture of, okay, not only do you have to make your backstory on what your character goals are, but you need to figure out how you are attached to my DMPC and or their family. And the main character syndrome as a dungeon master. Look, in my opinion, if you want your character to be the center of everything, write a book. Don't drag other people to it. Plus, it shows how far the DM and even his friends and sister will go to make other people miserable. Especially Druid, because the way he acted towards OP, even from the beginning, seems unnecessarily hostile. But maybe Druid was jealous that the DMPC wasn't focusing on OP than him. Who knows? But I don't buy that bullshit that he sent the message on accident and it was meant for someone else. He did it on purpose and wanted to see your reaction for it, which is gross. But in the end, you, Wizard, and Cleric left the table for good, and from the sounds of it, you're doing a lot better, so I am happy to hear that. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. If you'd like to give me more support, you can follow me on my socials through my Linktree, and if you have stories you want me to read, please post them on my subreddit or email it to me. Until then, may you find your worth in the waking world.